Toys. They make a lot of money. And to keep making money, toy companies kept inventing new ways of attracting a young audience and their parents' wallets. The long-running toy lines have TV productions and movies attached to them. Franchises such as the Pokemon series have made billions. The 70s were the early years for serialized toys based on properties targeted towards children, with Stretch Armstrong, Million Dollar Man, Soccer Robots, Micronauts, early Star Wars figures, which have already made 100 million USD in the first year, bolstering their own successful toy lines. It would make sense that other companies would want a piece of the pie. One of these companies was Nippon Sunrise, so they approached Yoshihiro Tomino, who was well known for his work on Astro Boy, which is credited as kickstarting Eastern animation. So, he got to work and drafted up a story, a space war saga that aimed to take the relatively new mecha genre to new heights, with a more grounded approach to robot warfare. Now, imagine this, you're an executive that gets someone who worked on Astro Boy to create a new series for children, compete with Western cartoons, and sell toy robots. And you get this. This story was, while within the same spirit as what we eventually got, a much darker take. Amuro, the main character, dies halfway through, and the main cast aligns itself with the antagonist, Shah Aznavour. The executives weren't too happy with that and forced a lot of changes to be made. This is where we get the real conflict of the show. Sunrise's goal was to make a show that sells toys. Tomino wanted to tell a gritty space war saga. These two concepts are clearly at odds with each other throughout the series. After a lot of back and forth between the executives and creative team, they came to some compromise, which is how we got the series we have today and the groundwork for all of Gundam. One of Tomino's biggest inspirations was Starship Troopers, a political sci-fi novel by US author Robert A. Heinlein. Mobile Suit Gundam is obviously an incredibly political work itself, but I'm not gonna open that can of worms in that video. Well, I'm gonna talk about the war aspect, which is political, but the actual politics displayed within Gundam, but I will try and do it in a future video. Gundam was a risk. Most studios would have probably passed on it and demanded another Astro Boy or something a bit more family friendly. Although Astro Boy does have some more mature themes compared to modern Western cartoons, back in the day it was really considered tame, especially compared to what Gundam delivered. Sunrise took a risk, and considering that Gundam is the 4th highest grossing anime series of all time, I'd say they were pretty successful. It's crazy that we can even have this kind of conversation around a show designed to sell toys to children, but despite its corporate intent, the Gundam team managed to craft a story about war, loss, politics. A story that still manages to captivate audiences to this day. Mobile Suit Gundam is set in the year UC 0079, hence the name 0079. Humanity is divided by those who reside on Earth and those who live in space. Zeon, a principality that claims the space colonies, declares independence from the Earth Federation government. The government doesn't accept Zeon's claim, which leads to a one-year war which claims almost half of the world's population. The story of 0079 is set at Site 7, which is largely unaffected by the war. The Earth Federation lands a ship called the White Base to pick up very important cargo, but they are foiled by Zeon suits, which are highly advanced killing robots that are giving Zeon the upper hand. War breaks out in Site 7, killing and injuring several civilian residents. Our protagonist, Emerald Ray, and several other residents make it aboard the White Base. The hopeless tides of the war might turn towards the Federation's favor, as the cargo they picked up is actually a weapon surpassed Zeon's mobile suit, the RX-79 Gundam. This clearly sets the Earth Federation up as the heroes, and Zeon as the bad guys, as Zeon is seen attacking civilians. Meanwhile, the Earth Federation is not only letting civilians on, they're also actively protecting them. The Zeon soldiers wear these German-inspired uniforms and the scary music plays whenever they are on screen. Meanwhile, the Federation soldiers protect civilians and even give them shelter in the White Base, but it's all a matter of perspective. As the show goes on, we see other sides of both the Federation and Zeon. While the show still very much follows the Federation perspective, it gives characters motivations that make sense. By far the most notable character on the Zeon side is Char Aznavour, a dedicated soul who fights for Zeon with heart and might. But all is not as it seems. The story of Char is one about betrayal, revenge and family royalty. Gundam The Origin delivers an expanded and absolutely fantastic prologue to Char's story and is well worth a watch. It was also my introduction to the series. It was streaming on Hulu back in the day. I think nowadays it is available on Crunchyroll, but the Crunchyroll version is shortened. But it is still available on Hulu. However, if you live in European territory, you won't have access to Hulu outside of using a VPN. The show was never finished due to a lack of viewers. However, the toyline was moderately successful, so that Tomino worked on a 3-part theatrical version, this time giving Tomino more creative freedom. These releases were successful enough to warrant production of 2 additional series, and eventually a 4th totally original movie. Sunrise also eventually got their wish with a more kid-friendly Gundam with Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which was much more lighthearted and completely removed from the canon. But canon is a weird subject in Gundam anyways. Nowadays you also have shows such as the Isekai. Nowadays you also have shows such as Gundam Dive and Gundam Fighters. What was it called? Wait, shit. Gundam Dive? Gundam Build Divers, yeah. Gundam Build Divers, which is too kid-friendly for my taste, honestly. I try to watch the show, but it's made for children. But like in a way where you can't really enjoy it if you aren't one. 0079 manages to incorporate a wide variety of characters that are generally interesting. In this video I want to talk about Miharu Ratake, a minor yet important character that perfectly symbolizes Gundam's messages. There will be spoilers beyond this point, so if you haven't seen 0079 and you like what you've heard so far, give the series a watch. Early in the series we get introduced to Kai. Kai is a bit of a coward, he's loudmouthed, talks badly about people, shifts the blame on others, and in general is just a bit of a dickhead. When the crew lands in Ireland, he decides to part ways with the rest, deciding that the military life just isn't for him.
Kai-san! Kai-san! どこ行くんです？
しゃあねえな。軍人なんてお堅いのはショーに合わねえんだから。
カイさん、僕はあなたの全部が好きというわけじゃありません。でも、今日まで一緒にやってきた仲間じゃないですか。
そういう言い方好きだぜ、アムロ。ま、元気でやれや。
カイさん!
Out and about, he meets Miharu Ratake, who he'd run into earlier before. She offers him a place of refuge and allows him to stay with her and her siblings. There's some obvious sparks flying between the two, and seems like Kai, who constantly gets antagonized, is gonna be getting a happy exit from the show. But what we, as the viewers at this point, don't know is that Miharu is a Zeon spy. Her loyalties lie entirely with her family, who she takes care of after her parents died in the war. She only gives Zeon intel to survive. After finding a gun, Kai starts to become suspicious. Zeon forces attack the white base and Kai takes it upon himself to help the team in a dire situation. He ends up reuniting with the white base crew not much later and decides to continue the military life. But there's a spy on board. Miharu. Part of her wanted to follow Kai, and another part of her is following her duty. She eventually gets discovered by Kai and Amuro. They decide to keep her presence a secret for now. They also don't have much time to think about it, as the ship gets attacked again. During the attack, Miharu decides to aid the crew and help fix the gunner, which got damaged earlier. Thanks to her efforts, the white base make it through the attack and is ready to strike back another day. But Miharu didn't make it. We don't see her death, she's just gone, never to be seen again. We never find out what happened to her. There's no closure. Most shonen anime show character deaths as the grand sacrifices for the greater good. But that isn't Gundam. Miharu is just another casualty. That is the reality of war. While most space anime from the 70s use aliens as the enemy, Gundam tells a compelling war story. The antagonists are human, and they have motivations and justifications for fighting, which get revealed later in the story. While there is a clear line between the group of people we are following and the enemy team...
My team? Enemy team! Those are the factions. Grandpa, can you tell me about your team? How you fought for your team in World War II? Yes, my team. Look at my glorious team. And the enemy team. We didn't know anything about them, just that they were the enemy.
This show does make it very clear throughout its runtime that it doesn't just want to portray them as the villains, the evil enemies. Which the show does incredibly well, because it also doesn't downplay the actions of each faction. Both fractions do things that are morally questionable, but both sides have motivation that make sense if you examine it. The show is a hard sell, especially right now and with how primitive the animation is. Announced that they were gonna remake the show forever ago, and there was kind of a remake of some scenes with the PlayStation 2 game, having redrawn scenes that are absolutely gorgeous. But I think works such as Mobile Suit Gundam are more important than ever now. It might not be the escapist fantasy you want right now, and yeah, you could just binge The Office for the 50th time, but maybe that isn't what's best right now. Sometimes you need to stop ignoring what's going on around you and need to dive headfirst what's going on in the world. And I mean, hey, it has fighting robots in space. It's not that grounded.